it's such an interesting contrast to have gone from our first Schlanger to this.
Well, here's the thing. I always knew this was going to be special for me because it is genuinely like one of my favourite sci-fi pieces of media I've ever consumed in my life. Like this episode means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think I realised that I liked it as much until I rewatched Doctor Who for the first time. Like, it kind of stuck with me a bit because I liked the Reaper design as a kid, but that was about it. But when I first went back and tried to rewatch Doctor Who, which was when I was trying to get back into Peter Capaldi's stuff because I never really gave it a proper chance, and I don't actually think I made it back there because I got caught in the slog of Matt Smith and just stopped. But I remember when I went back that I found this episode to be like particularly more exciting.
Like you're saying, like every time I've gone back to it
from the previous one.
Every time I've gone back to it, I do like it more. Would I say it's one of my favourite episodes in all of sci-fi? That's a bit harder. But I think I've watched a lot more sci-fi.
A lot more.
You.
I'm very picky with what kind of sci-fi I even like to begin with. So I'm not like I don't watch very much.
But this is better than any Expanse episode very easily.
Yes and no.
Yeah, because it's a perfect package.
It's a very different show.
True.
Very much.
You can't really compare them.
I'm not saying that out of spite.
I think a better comparison would be: is it better than any Star Trek episode?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Is it better than any Quantum Leap episode? Maybe not.
I do mean to watch Quantum Leap because that is my style of sci-fi.
I'd say maybe not for a Star Trek one, but I'm struggling to.
I don't think, especially when in terms of like within the context of this type of episode is what I'm saying. Like,
like a time loop or
are there
better
sci-fi episodes in other? Because sci-fi as a genre explores a lot of different genres within itself.
This is my favourite time travel story of all time. I don't think anything else I've seen with time travel in it holds up to this episode.
I'm with that.
Because of how it's written and because of everything about it. The writing is really good. The pacing from beginning to end is basically perfect. The dialogue is fantastic, unlike the previous episode we just watched.
Yep.
The characters are at a place where we know a lot about them, but this episode tells us so much more. As every single line of dialogue is actually really important. And even though it stands up completely fine on zero background knowledge, and you could go into Doctor Who and just watch this episode, it also does tie into the finale of this season and the overall plot of the entire series.
Mm-hmm.
So it hits every box for me. Also, Murray Gold is going off harder in this episode than in any episode so far, because there are just more moments where the score can shine, because there are more emotional character beats in this episode than any other episode.
So, like, the reason that I think probably one of the reasons that the previous episode is teetering on the Schlanger banger, even though we ended up on Schlanger, was because of the score, whereas here, it's already a banger without the score, and then the score just makes it that.
It's because it's a good episode, and the score elevates it,
like
which is what a score should be doing, you know?
Everything Murray Gold does is going to elevate.
Yes,
right. Every episode where he's scored.
We've seen where people have fan dubbed in Murray Gold's score into Chibnall era episodes, and it makes them significantly better.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Because
I have also
the
seen...
music in those often feels almost stock in moments that are supposed to be emotionally impactful,
right?
And it just doesn't hit. But you plug in any bit of emotional Murray Gold music, which was not written for those scenes, and it works better than what was actually used.
It was definitely one of the issues the Chibnall era had. But anyway, so straight out of the gate on this one, and again, it was the first thing I wrote down was CMGW. Like from the get go, he's like on fire,
almost instant, because it starts with Jackie telling baby Rose about her dad.
We get the setup of the father's death, which also then sets up Jackie's wish of him not dying.
Yeah.
Which sets up
it's more Jackie's wish that someone was there, which is the crucial point.
Yeah.
Because
I forgot
that's the kind of the intro into the we can save him. It's the like, oh, we're so over, we're so back kind of thing. Where it's like, it's so over, and then it's like, we can save him instead, and then everything goes to shit, and it says, it's so over again.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good cycle this episode's got.
And then...
Oh yeah, no, you can. Yeah.
It fades from her mum describing what had happened to it being that she's retold this exactly the same to the Doctor.
Yeah.
And then what's kind of surprising in a way is the Doctor goes along with it and is like, okay, but he's like, oh, we can watch, you can be there to hold the hand. I think like that's the initial reason he's okay with it, is because like they're there so she can hold the hand. And then the first time she ends up crying, running away and crying because it was so upsetting seeing
Which
him
I
die.
think is one of
Which
the
I think
things,
is
the strongest point of this episode is how, I've brought it up in other episodes, but how human everyone feels in this.
Yep.
And I think the most human reaction to that is, you get the what you have to do, but it's the doing it when you're seeing it in front of you.
And then the Doctor allowing it again, but being like extra cautioned, like, you can't let us see us, you can't like do anything, just go over once we're away, hold his hand, and then we'll go.
He specifies
once here.
She's run off and he's followed, so he specifies that the other Rose has to have left, but also the other Doctor has to have left, because even he can't see a duplicate of her, as the rules to her before they go back again. Or right after they've gone back, when they're kind of watching each other from behind. Which I think is really good, because it's like, it really doesn't miss a beat. Like, the specifics of what the issue will be if that happens are what we deal with for the rest of the episode, but he lays out exactly what's about to go wrong before it happens, and I like that.
And then, obviously, she runs, she saves him, and then the Doctor... So obviously at that point, we all know this is going to cause a paradox of some kind.
Yeah.
And I still think there's kind of paradoxes by the end of it. A little bit.
I disagree. Time has changed, but without there being a paradox.
There's only one...
But we'll get to that.
There's only one little tiny paradox. It's not actually one I've written down, so I'm going to write this down as well.
Yeah, you do that.
But otherwise, at that point, we all know it's going to be going wrong. But Rose doesn't yet.
Yeah.
It seems.
Yeah.
She's like, I've done it. And she's elated, and
I think
Rose
she's just not thinking about
Rose is also very clearly not like a nerd, so I just don't think that she's consumed any sci-fi media with time traveling. At the young age of 19 in 2005, you know, there's quite a lot of options for time travel media. Unfortunately, in her case, not Doctor Who. But,
yes.
If she were here with us now, if Rose Tyler were here today, she'd have known, because she'd have watched Doctor Who and she'd have seen herself do the bad thing.
So,
which itself would have been apparent.
Why does the Doctor not just show his companions Doctor Who?
I thought you were going to say, why does the Doctor not just shoot them when they do things
the whole
wrong?
thing where she goes back with her dad to the flat, and the whole time the Doctor is clearly
he's fuming.
Furious, but he's just
fuming.
silent. He just stays silent, and he doesn't speak until Rose speaks to him.
Because a big part of it, which he brings up later, is all of his race are dead, and of course he's thought about saving them, right?
Yeah.
But he knows why.
So that's the very next part. Is that he's so he absolutely puts it down. He's like, you stupid apes, and like goes off about how, you thought I'd never save my own race, like you're saying, like that part.
I think the silence before, when he waits for her to kind of talk to him before he explains everything that she's done wrong, is more a kindness of he really understands why, but he's also piecing together the whole bit of the tirade he goes on, which is she didn't want to come along with him until he mentioned that his ship was a time machine as well as a spaceship.
And he's thinking, was this all for this?
So in that silence, he's not only going through every single moment they've spent together and the fact that he missed that she was potentially manipulating him, but also he's kind of sparing her feelings a little bit at first with his silence, as long as he can manage to bottle it, because he understands exactly why she'd have done such a thing as well. Like, if a higher power than him came with an even greater technology of time travel and time machine stuff, and was just able to go back to Gallifrey, do you reckon the Doctor, after the Time War, would have just fixed it? Probably. I reckon he'd have broken a couple of rules to try and fix it in vain.
before we go further, I realise we all need to do our 5-word summary.
We do, yeah.
We've just launched straight into
That's
it.
fine.
started going
I
through.
didn't mind changing things up a little.
Yeah. So, do you want to start, Kamal?
I've got 3. I'm gonna go in the order of, I think, the most casual to the one that's funniest.
Yeah. Okay. That
So,
works. That works.
We've got
we tend to vote funny.
yeah,
Yes.
my because I probably won't use the first 2 is the thing. We've got best Doctor Who episode, the best Doctor Who episode. That's my first one because that's my sincere belief. The second one I have is Dead Dad of the Year, because Pete Tyler, Dead Dad of the Year. He begins the episode alive but then dies, and then by the end of the episode he's died again. In fact, if you were to go chronologically, he's dead, then he's alive, then he dies, then he's alive, and then he dies again, and then he stays dead. So that's the order of Pete
Until a
Tyler's
separate
life.
Pete Tyler is brought back.
Yeah, but he was a different man. And my final 5-word summary, which I've written in block caps, is best dad Pete fucks hard.
Okay. Matt.
So I've only got one.
Nice.
And it is despite apocalypse, Jackie's attitude remains.
Okay.
That's great.
I've only got one.
It really stuck with me how she was just ready to throw
She's
hands over
exactly the
nothing.
same. She did not change
No.
from the 80s to the 2000s.
No, not one time. BSM.
Jackie's incest suspicions cause problems.
Oh, I have a feeling I know where the vote's going to go at the end of this episode.
I like both. I like all suggestions. I
That's
like
great.
best dad fucks
Because-
hard is excellent.
Like, the thing is, if she hadn't suspected they were banging, he might not have grabbed baby Rose to hand to Rose.
Yeah.
And then the TARDIS might have materialised, and he might have lived.
Yeah.
So Jackie's incest suspicions killed him.
Just before we go anywhere
Again.
further, my banger rating, before the episode began, I wrote the word supreme in big letters across my entire book. I think this is a supreme banger.
Oh, I
We
think,
don't have a
I
supreme.
agree.
It's a
No, I know.
absolute.
But I just need you to know that I've written
Well,
supreme.
no. We have absolute bangers, and then we have the banger supreme, like the
I
Dalek
think this
supreme.
is I think this is the banger supreme. Maybe you get one.
You get one.
Maybe you get one.
All
I'm
right.
definitely using it here.
All right.
Because-
I'm going to save it.
No, that's fine. But
Because-
this is my favourite episode. I don't think that goes for either of you. But this
No,
is
no.
actually, if I had to pick all of Doctor Who, of course I would. If we're establishing you get one banger
Is it
supreme,
one of the best? Is it
I'm
one
using
of,
it there.
if not the best episode of Doctor Who? I could be convinced to argue for it being the best episode. Is it my favourite? No.
and that's what I think you should save it for. I
Yeah,
think
okay,
it should
yeah.
be used for your favourite
Well,
episode.
yeah, it's like how my favourite movie isn't what I consider to be
You
a
know what?
perfect movie.
What about this? Because I don't believe either of you disliked it enough for it not to be a banger anyway.
Also,
What if-
the favourite
what
time
if-
travel story
Yeah.
is Back to the Future.
Yeah, that makes sense.
My favorite time travel.
Also,
story.
perfect time travel story.
I've still not seen it, but you will show it to me one day, I'm sure.
God,
And
Well,
you
no.
haven't seen Blue... Man,
it is
oh
nuts
God,
that you haven't
fucking-
seen Back to the Future.
I
And you
don't
haven't
think it is.
He's not seen Back to the Future, and he's not seen Blues Brothers.
That is sad.
That's because you guys have shown everyone but me.
That is true.
But also, I haven't shown anybody Back to the Future because
Ah,
everybody's seen
That's
it.
fair. I meant Blues Brothers though,
Yes, Blues
Whereas-
Brothers that's
'cause-
on my
'cause-
list. That's on
because
my list.
you've shown a lot of people Blues Brothers.
And so Sam, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it is. It's like it would be like if you revealed just now that you hadn't seen Big Trouble in Little China.
It'd be
somehow.
like if I revealed that I hadn't seen Father's
Who.
Day, the episode of Doctor Who,
I look
Right,
over
so-
and your eyes are shut.
and
there's
I vanish like the Doctor and Rose when they saw themselves.
To continue on from where we were going to the
I just
run
wanted to say, what if we do the thing where when you use your supreme banger rating, it just vetoes it as an absolute banger? I think we each get one.
Oh,
Yeah,
I like
okay,
that. You
okay.
know,
Because I don't think you guys would disagree on it being a banger either way.
It is
Generally,
an
yeah,
absolute
yeah.
banger.
And I think in most cases when you two eventually use yours, it's going to probably be one that's just generally very good either way.
I think
I
I've
just
got
think that's
good
a
idea
funny.
of where mine
We
is.
should have.
I think
and we
mine's
should
pretty
have-
uncontroversial.
we should have,
I'm not gonna lie.
I don't
We
know
should
about
have some
mine.
kind of like giga schlanger that we get one that we're like, this is the fucking worst, and we get one each which just vetoes it as like the worst rating.
Yeah, no, actually, okay. If we're gonna do like a super banger,
because
we
I don't
each
want
get
to
a
waste.
Giga Schlanger as well.
yeah,
Giga Schlanger.
I
Okay,
wanna,
yeah.
Because there's one episode I really fucking hate.
Okay. Don't tell
Okay.
us what it is.
No, I won't. But there's an episode and I really hate it.
I'm imagining, so we've got the Banger Supreme, are we calling this like the Schlanger
I
controller?
mean, like the thing is, Chris Chibnall does exist.
Oh.
And it is one of his. And I'm not going to say any more than that.
No,
but
that's
that
fine.
was obvious.
There's
I
a
think
lot.
that was a high
lot.
chance of that
There's so
happening.
many. And the best thing is, like, there's so many that Matt's not seen of Chibnall's. You're going to be going through every episode like, do I burn it now, or is there going to be a worse one?
No, right?
So-
I
kind of
watch me burn it on like Bad Wolf, like a good episode.
If you did, I'd be appalled, but I'd also respect it so
No,
much.
it's for the record.
'Cause it's
It
part of
must
the game.
be-
I
yeah, it
think
must
I
be
think I
listed.
think in the event that somebody does because me and Matt both have a supreme banger and a giga schlanger.
Yeah,
If one of us does the opposite
it
at the
cancels
same
out.
time, they cancel
Yeah,
out, and
they
it just goes
definitely
on
do.
the standard votes.
And if you do two of the same on the same episode, one of you has wasted one.
Yeah.
I don't think they add together to make anything
No,
bigger.
no.
It would be
No.
very funny.
No, they
but-
don't.
Yeah, we'll leave that one.
Which incentivizes, if there's an episode that you think that we all really like, it's going to be difficult for you guys to decide if you want to.
Well, it's not so much. We don't care about what you like.
No,
anymore,
you don't
'cause
care
you've
about
already
me.
voted.
But I don't need to be cared about because I'm right. And this was the best episode of
No,
Doctor
see,
Who.
my reveal is actually that this is going to be a giga schlanger for me.
Okay, so
on to more likes, I suppose.
Yeah.
the overhead shots.
Oh, the Reaper
The Reaper
Cam.
Vision.
You've got the Reaper Cam,
Reaper Cam
and
is
before you
great.
see them, and they're killing people.
Yeah.
Excellent horror stuff.
Tension building, fantastic.
So
The
I've got
weird
overhead
strings,
shot tension.
Yeah.
The weird Murray
I
Gold
loved all of
strings
the
that are like
creepy music.
horror.
And then that
yeah.
then leads on to the reveal of the TARDIS. I think there should be more times where the Doctor goes into the TARDIS and it's just a box.
I disagree. My disagreement is based entirely on that shit hits so hard, and I don't want them to overuse it.
Mhm.
No, but I think it like
and I can't think of another time that they could use it that wouldn't make me go, that shit's not earned, not like in Father's Day.
but they could do it in another
I get what you mean.
paradox.
In another paradox.
Unless
And
it's being
I-
used as a paradox
I
machine.
really thought that they were going to touch on that with the paradox machine.
There's only
in
like two
Sound of
times
Drums.
that the TARDIS has been used as a paradox machine in New Who, though.
yeah.
Twice. When was the other time?
It was very recently Sutek.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's not
Alright.
explicitly stated,
But it's essentially
but
yeah.
the TARDIS
Fair
goes
enough.
red inside and there's paradoxes.
And it makes the
Okay.
noise.
It makes the bad TARDIS gone paradox noise.
Is the bad TARDIS the Bardis?
Yeah.
That's why it makes the noise, because it's a bard now.
It makes bad music.
I
And
love
then-
it. Okay.
the setup with the time car, the car
The set
that's
with the time
trapped
car.
in
Okay,
time.
So to go over the time car and stuff, because I guess every time I watch this episode, I kind of think more about does the plot fully make sense, and I have more questions, and then they end up being answered because it's quite well written, and it's written in such a way that a lot of it is implied without being overtly said as well. So the idea, I guess, is that the TARDIS, when it becomes a phone box, is not actually the TARDIS anymore at all.
It's just a phone
It's
box.
almost like they've shifted onto a separate branch of time that's like clipped from the rest of the tree,
Yeah.
and there is just a phone box there now, which is why the key starts rematerializing an entirely new TARDIS, and it's taking ages because it's almost like the
So-
TARDIS has to break through into this like
Yeah.
time-locked paradox.
I've always wondered how
world.
wide the paradox bubble thing is.
It says at the very least it's implied that Earth is
Yeah.
entirely within this paradox.
Uh-huh.
Whether the rest of everything, I mean, you have to assume that time is what the paradox is centered around, which is crazy, but it
Mhm.
really goes with the idea of this episode that even a normal man can be so important that making
Which is, I think, a
saving
great,
one guy's
a
life can
common
fuck
message of,
time
of,
this
of,
bad.
of Doctor Who, and sometimes it's shown and sometimes it's stated, and here it's very much shown rather than stated, and it's great.
But they do reinforce it a couple of times, which I like as well. But
Yeah.
they reinforce it in the text, and then they
But, you
show
know,
it
like,
actually
I think-
mattering.
Initially, when I think of Doctor Who thinking of the little people, what comes to mind is the Capaldi speech from
Yeah.
the Bill season when they've gone to London and Victorian era, and he does the speech to that racist dude.
Yeah.
That's sort of the easier way to show the message of Doctor Who that does that. But then, if people are willing to watch an episode, this is the better way to show
I think so.
that's the vibe Doctor Who has throughout it.
Doctor Who?
Just to jump into my little bit on the humanness of this episode, something
Mhm.
that I hadn't remembered about this episode is the implication of the father of the groom doesn't care for the bride. And he doesn't care for the bride because he thinks that she's not good enough for his son, and he thinks that his son is only marrying her because he knocked her up. That's his words that he says over the phone before the phone stops working.
And you get that lovely human moment with the doctor speaking to them about how they met, why they...
But the other thing I didn't notice is that the very clear follow-on implication from that is that's also the exact same reason why Pete and Jackie got married a year earlier, which was the year Rose was born. So
shit.
Jackie was pregnant with Rose in that scene where they are getting what looks much more like a lower budget courthouse style wedding.
Yep.
And he fucks up
and
on
he
the
gets her
vows
name wrong,
and
which is going to come back so hard in the Doomsday episodes.
And then that goes on to the demon reveal, the
Reaper.
The Reaper.
I love them.
They're so silly because I think if there were to be anything to dislike about this episode from my perspective, it would be that the Reapers being a monster at all is kind of unnecessary.
Yep.
You could have done a kind of wound in time thing like they do with Matt Smith's Doctor. But I honestly, firstly, as a kid, I just really liked their design. I like the weird bat creature with a scythe tail and the weird belly
I love
mouth.
its mouth on its face.
I would like
chest,
it.
yeah.
I just think they're neat.
I would like it if they were a bit more timey, in the
Yeah.
same way you get the sort of goldeny effect of the time, both in this episode and also then at the end.
Yeah.
And that's sort of implied to be, oh, that's what timiness looks like. And it would be nice if they had a bit more of that in their design.
It's unclear quite what the Reapers are, right? Cause
He says they're from another dimension and they're feeding on time. I think kind of it's implied that if a timeline goes wrong, they sort of feed on the wrong timeline and sort of prune the timeline.
I've seen people, because of the way he describes it as they're kind of cleansing the timeline.
And he
I've seen
clearly
people
knows
assume that they're more sentient than they seem to be. They're much more like they're much more like a white blood cell than an intentive force that's trying to do something.
The fact the Doctor has the ability.
He tells it that he's the oldest thing in the room.
So let's assume for a minute that the plot goes different and the Doctor manages to bring the TARDIS to the church and they all manage to get in the TARDIS. He seems pretty confident they can get out using that method.
Yeah.
Which to me does imply that it's just like a branched timeline that shouldn't exist rather than completely changing all of the wibbly wobbly timey-wimey.
I have a weird feeling, and it's based on nothing. I have a weird feeling that the way they would have fixed it though is not the way necessarily that the way they could fix it is take all of the survivors back in time and kind of, I guess, replace themselves in some way, in some weird way. And then replace dead Pete with alive Pete. And then he stays alive, and because he says that everyone who's been through once they're saved will forget everything.
Yeah.
But what you changed will stay changed because he's trying to be nice and keep Pete alive. One of my favourite things in the whole episode is the fact that the Doctor is accused of wanting Pete dead. After he explains that Rose has fucked up the timeline, she's like, well, you'd prefer him to be dead. And he says, I'm not saying that. But then he also goes on to demonstrate that he really doesn't want that. The moment Pete's alive, he's like, I want to fix this so that Pete stays alive because he cares so much about Rose. And their whole lovers spat this episode is, I think, what highlights to me, this is the episode where the Doctor and Rose's relationship feels like it solidifies as a kind of a relationship for me. And it's of course tied into Rose seeing her parents fight in a way that she didn't know they did, and then make up when Pete's like, I'm gonna fix this, and we'll get there, Jax, let's do it, and then they have a little kiss, and it's nice.
We get on to the recurring theme throughout this that is part of what makes it so great, is that her dad works it out himself that she is his daughter.
I just
from
wrote
the future.
I wrote
After the Doctor's had this
Pete
big run
down
around
the year.
shouting at everybody, the Doctor's done this big run around, he's got everybody somewhere safe, and then he figures it out himself. And that continues because
he's established as this guy with a weird creative mind that works a little bit different and out of the box. He doesn't think like the average person, he's a little bit off kilter from everyone else, and it's not working out for him the way that he wants, but that doesn't mean he's unintelligent. one of the things I wrote down because I thought it was brilliant is that he came up with the idea of a windowsill with compartments for milk/yogurt for students. That is the shittest.
What the fuck is
that?
that?
Is the shittest
Wait
idea
till I
ever.
own my own house. I'm gonna build a windowsill with separate compartments
And
for
yeah,
milk and yogurt.
If someone pulled it
Labelled
off, I'd
as
be
such.
like, yeah, you know what? Why not?
I mean, like, all you need to do is deconstruct a mini fridge, and then make like
Yeah.
an anti-hob, which is possible because I've seen Colin Furze do it.
That's fair. He would.
He would.
Yeah, I don't know. The idea that you have this setup for Pete. I think if they did it with any other character, I wouldn't buy it. But the way they play on the fact that he's kind of a slightly quirky inventor, and the way they play on the fact that he really doesn't believe in himself because of all his failures and because of Jackie always getting on him about it. He is a punching bag in this episode, and one of the biggest quotes for me in this episode is him essentially saying that I'm your dad. It's my job for it to be my fault. It's his job to take the blame and then fix things, and that's his kind of idea of his masculinity. And that all comes together in him figuring it out.
His self-esteem comes in when she goes on about what a great dad he is, and
he
that's
knows
the moment he's like,
that ain't me.
because it was like he wasn't sure whether or not he died.
And you can see his the acting is fantastic, by the way. You can see his smile of like he's hearing about the future turn into the slight half smile of he's begun to figure it out, but he's still smiling because he's trying to keep his daughter happy that he now knows is his future daughter.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
when he
then
figures out his...
and then it goes into this kind of half grimace of he's trying to hold it together, but he's already figured
and
it out.
he's like, I'm not a good dad, and then proceeds to go on to prove that he is a good
He's
dad.
such a good dad.
And it's like there's such that brilliant moment there, and it's so good.
But I think it's not just to say that he has such low self-esteem that he knows that he couldn't have been a good dad. It's more to say and to prove that the way he would have been a good dad, which he would have been, would not have been what Rose described.
Yeah.
The things that she's describing is what she wanted growing up because she didn't have a dad. And he can tell because he knows that he's a weirdo
He would have been a much more chaotic dad.
but he would have tried to
would have still
provide
been
in
a
some
good
way
dad.
and
I mean,
fix
like, my
things and
dad's
sort
chaotic,
shit.
but he's great.
Yeah. I think he's the kind of dad that would, like, fix your bike real good, but, like, he would be shit at coming to, like, your, like, graduation. You know, he gives that vibe.
He'd take you on, an adventure to go see some random bullshit that he's involved with.
If she wanted to sell it to
And
him,
then,
she would have
like-
talked about how he let her, like, create little ideas, you know, with him and stuff, and did tinkering together. That he might have bought. But him taking them to the park for picnics every Saturday and reading to her every night and never missing a story once, when he's
like,
late to the wedding
He's
because
like,
he forgot to buy a gift.
He's probably like, I forgot to buy the gift. I forgot to brush my teeth this morning.
Yeah.
Like, how did I read a story every night? I don't believe it. No, it's great.
And let's also be clear. Rose has been alive for like some amount of a year, right? She was born the previous year, in '86. So he's already been a dad for a little bit.
Yeah.
So he really does actually know that that's not him, because he's like, there's no way that I go from what I am now to stepping up that good is kind of, I guess, his mindset, maybe. Or being that different kind of a man.
To move on to a funnier moment.
Yeah.
When the doctor's talking to little baby Rose, he's like, "Oh, you won't mess up the world, will you?"
And then he like pauses and goes, "So you aren't gonna bring about the end of the world, are you? Are you?" And then it just cuts to like this baby staring at him like, "Who the fuck are you?" Oh, so good.
And then Rose comes in and he's like, "I wasn't doing anything."
And also like just him at the end of his speech about how she kind of did fuck things up,
but he doesn't know what to do, and she apologises.
And he's like, "Don't touch the baby." That's really funny.
We'll get to that.
Is that one of your quotes? Yeah.
Oh
shit. Oh, I did put anti-Thatcher with a little heart.
Oh, fuck
Oh,
yeah, that was good.
Because there's posters at the beginning.
Third term.
No third term for Thatcher.
Oh, if only.
God, what an awful woman. A wicked woman.
A wicked woman.
We had a party when she died.
Oh hell yeah!
Nice.
Like a upcoming.
I remember.
one
I
about Rupert
remember
Murdoch.
very distinctly when she died because me and my dad were on a train, and he read it on his phone, and this was relatively early in phone having data, and he was like, "Thatcher's dead," and he turned around and he was just telling everyone because he was like, "She's dead."
I'm imagining him singing
And
like,
then
the
within-
Wicked Witch is dead.
No, entirely,
And then
everyone
within-
on the train getting
And
up.
then that weekend, my parents had a party. It was great.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Again, where Rupert Murdoch goes.
Oh, that was another thing I wanted to point out quickly in this episode.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry to cut you off, but
Oh.
the mixing up of different like time things for the sake
That
of
was
showing
great.
that time is broken.
Yeah.
So like they're listening to Rick Astley. Well, I think the song came out in like 86 or 87, so it's like perfectly on beat for like what would be on the radio.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to like the streets, which is like early 2000s.
Oh really?
And Rose, because it's meant to be music that was popular when in Rose's time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it well because my dad really likes the streets.
That was a
but
nice
like
little moment. But
she goes, that's not out yet, and then she just ignores it and goes back on
So-
her phone from the fucking future
Yeah.
and confuses the shit out of Pete again. He's like, is that a phone?
All the
the
bits with Pete were
from
just
when he
so good.
we've talked about when they have the conversation, Rose lies about the future and he works it out, and then that very shortly afterwards, Jackie has incest accusations
She
again.
She does have
And that
those
leads
accusations.
to him being like, "Look, it's the same woman," and hands her the baby.
Which, as a setup of don't touch the baby, a lesser episode would have had her just touch it for no real good reason later on.
It's
Yeah.
an excellent.
so
like,
well
she
baked
doesn't
in.
even really have the control over the situation there.
She doesn't have the control over the situation. We know Jackie's character, so we know that this is the kind of gesture that would probably have to be done to make any sense to her. So it makes sense that Pete's doing it, and Pete doesn't know that Rose can't touch Rose.
Yeah.
So it all just
But then,
fits. And
very
the Doctor
quickly-
lunging to try and stop them as well. Like,
I was
But what's
really
even
hoping
better
it
is
wouldn't be
the
an
Doctor has then zero hesitation to
Kill
sacrifice
himself,
himself
yeah.
to save
It's-
everybody else.
He wanted an order, right?
He did.
And he was like, follow this one, kill yourself. And then he runs out like, take me! And he learnt something from Harriet
We should
as well.
do that as an edit of having the Doctor go kill yourself, and then the Doctor be like, "I'm the oldest thing in here," and then dying.
Wait, no, it's so good because he's like, I'll be honest, I don't even have a plan. And then cut to the Doctor again going,
Kill yourself.
you want orders, follow this one, kill yourself. And then have him run out and be like, I'm
Die.
the oldest one in here, take me
That's
first.
brilliant.
I like that the Reapers interact with things based on what's oldest because they are essentially doing something akin to the Weeping Angels where they're feeding off kind of time shit.
Yeah.
And so the things that have accrued more time are higher value items to them.
Yeah.
It goes for the bride and
But,
she
it's
screams
also-
and then it goes for her father instead because he's older and then they all run inside and the bride
Yeah.
is spared. And I think that's neat. That's
I like how so many things in this episode aren't said.
because it's like they explain the old thing later, but like that bit that happens before then doesn't make sense until they explain it. But it all pieces together as soon as
But
it's
then
said.
there is the
It's
question
nice.
of why they're going for older people, but they can't get through the older walls. As
Yeah,
that's
I
protection.
have a feeling because of how long it takes to consume the Doctor versus the other people that the older things are, the longer it takes them to consume as well.
But then
but
they
also
should have
they
taken
don't-
even longer to consume the Doctor.
They don't
then.
consume. They don't consume anything that's not a person either.
Yeah.
This is a common trope in fantasy and sci-fi where if there's a thing like a Thanos snap that destroys half of all life in the universe,
But
it doesn't
not
harm
trees.
plants
No.
or bacteria or any microorganism because otherwise, like, if it was exactly half of everything, what's it doing? It on a species level? Is our
Yeah.
human taxonomy what it's based on?
It turns out we
That's
got it right
stupid.
first time. Yeah.
Yeah. So like.
Everybody coughing shit up because they've got so much bacteria in their gut that they're suddenly full of dust.
Yeah, right. It's
Well, all they got bacteria.
It's
you
like
can't
also
do
the,
anything
the,
yeah,
with
preg-
it
the
everyone
anymore.
died
pregnant
'cause you've
women who
run out.
suddenly have like wombs full of dust.
yeah, that's also true.
Or babies that just
Also,
go.
actually, the Thanos stat,
That's a good
the
point.
Thanos stat would be the ultimate answer to where life begins.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, it would.
pro-abortion thing. Oh my God.
Like at the point at which babies
Disney
disappeared in the
definitely skirted
womb.
away from that one. That would have been a big boy of
The
a
point at which
controversy.
babies disappear in the womb
Yeah,
is the point
determines
at
where
which
life
they
is.
can have abortions.
Yeah.
If all pregnant women disappeared like either they disappeared and the baby's gone, and then all pregnant women that stayed still had their baby, irrelevant of how big it was, then all unborn babies aren't alive.
Yeah, they're not real.
And Thanos would have answered that,
Yeah.
and therefore, in order to solve this whole thing in America, especially,
So you're saying the lack of zygotes that dropped out of thin air, out of dust piles, means that Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet was actually based?
he's pro-choice.
I really
Yeah.
had to bring this up very quickly before I then force us back on topic. Did you guys hear that lie that Trump said in an interview recently where he said the Democrats want abortion legalized both before and after birth?
That's awesome.
It's wild.
That's
but
so
anyway.
stupid.
Only if it's Rose's dad.
My
Yes.
my point was that I will ignore the fact that the exact sense of what the Reapers do and don't eat isn't accounted for, because otherwise they'd be out there eating trees like the whole time.
Well,
they'd ignore every human and they'd go
No,
for trees.
I appreciate
All
that.
buildings, like...
But they don't seem to eat buildings.
I
They
also-
don't seem to eat non-living
I would
things.
make
It's
the
implied that
argument-
they eat living things, but that trees don't
The
count.
reason they're
Yeah, which is so odd.
they're only eating humans is because humans have caused the paradox. So they're
Yeah.
starting with the humans.
And because I
Oh,
think the
yeah.
humans probably also have the largest effect on the time stream, and therefore
Yeah.
the cause and
I
effect
mean, what's a
of
tree going to
consuming
do?
them.
Grow.
Yeah,
I
slowly.
it could fall down.
I love the way the Reapers
Although
look
actually,
in
a
this
tree is an
episode.
entire ecosystem, and that it will never make sense. But sci-fi will never take that into an account
No.
because it would take too long to write
So,
anything
I
interesting.
love the way the Reapers look in this, but it would have been neat
Obviously-
if they were like these tripody things that just turn up and just eat the entire, just everything.
Doctor
I think they
sacrifices
should have eaten
himself.
everything. Yeah, sure.
When the Doctor sacrifices himself, I think he's hoping the TARDIS will still materialise, and
Yes,
then that just
that was the
is
thing.
pure unluck.
On the
that doesn't
on the
happen.
rewatch, I
Mm.
realised it was something that when it was happening, I was like, so wait, why does the TARDIS stop happening? Is it like tied to the Doctor?
It's because
And
the
I
Reaper
realised the
flies
Reaper
into
flies into it and gets warped out of there, just like the Doctor said would happen if any human tried to touch the key.
Mm.
Is they'd just get warped
Yeah.
into somewhere in time. On the outside of the TARDIS wall, so they're probably instantly fucking dead.
Also, like, just as a brief side note here, Sutek partly materialised in this alternate timeline.
did.
Like, what is going on?
Equally, I prefer the idea that for a while Sutek was just sat on a regular police box, like, what the fuck is this? And he had to quickly jump ship when time got fixed.
Hang on, has Sutek been hiding on the
Oh yeah,
TARDIS?
he's implied
sitting on
since
the
Pyramids
TARDIS.
of Mars. He's been sat on the TARDIS.
Okay, this is going to come up a lot. Every time the TARDIS gets into any weird peril, Sutek is sat on it, like, what the shit is going
Like
on?
when the TARDIS gets shrunk in Capaldi's era,
Uh-huh.
Or when it's on fire in, like, the Daleks, like,
or when it's
galaxy
constantly
star thing. When...
exploding in Matt Smith's era.
And he's just sat on it, like... I mean, realistically, he
I think-
dies in Matt Smith's
I
era,
think-
and they brought him back by fixing the timeline.
Yeah, I think he's constantly exploding, and they unexplode him to solve they kickstart a new universe and save Sutek.
But they did need to... They
We'll
did
get there
need
when
to-
we get there.
yeah.
We'll get there when we get there.
Okay.
Anyway,
Anyway.
so the final thing I wrote down is obviously, I mean I didn't write this bit down, but we get the wish. Rose is by his side as she dies.
As she dies.
As he dies. Rose.
I'm good at this.
if she ran to his side and he just shanked her really subtly
Oh yeah.
and went, "We go together,
What's the point
Rose."
in living?
So
Not to make others die.
so
I'm good at
anyway, so she's by his side as he dies. He's got somebody with him, and he looks up at her as he's dying, and
He doesn't say any stupid lines, and that so
Yeah,
makes it for me.
it's
I
so
love
good.
that.
And on top of that, the score cuts.
Yeah,
And
it
it
does.
builds and it builds and it builds, and you're like, oh, there's going to be this great big release of the score, and it's all going to release into like the sad score
Like a big
that's going to come.
crescendo
That's
Yeah.
or
coming,
something, yeah.
but it doesn't. It just cuts, and it's so much better for it.
There are
And I wrote
there
it
are
down.
2 moments where the score is dead silent in this episode for dramatic effect that are perfect. The other one is the conversation that's happening right up until he asks if he was a good dad. The whole conversation where he's asking about the future, there is no score. Until he asks if he was a good dad, and the moment Rose has to decide to lie to him is when the score comes in, and that was really good.
I didn't notice that as much. The one I noticed was the one when he's dying and it cuts, and it's like it
I think it's
It's
more
a
noticeable in reverse. Than,
it's a fantastic use though of cutting Scorb and just letting the moment breathe in silence.
Yeah, I really think so, and especially because there's no dialogue. It's just eye contact.
Yeah,
and she was there, and she was able to do the thing that
And
her
then
mum always
and
wanted
then-
suppose to be able to do.
The story changes and the Doctor reappears, and then
The other thing is that Rose, I suppose not Rose, Pete's actions, not only ensure that Rose and Jackie's lives are better going forwards, which makes him Dad of the Year and also probably Dead Husband of the Year.
Yes.
But also,
Dead Souls of the year 1987.
1987. He also improves the life of the driver, presumably, because instead of it being a hit and run, instead of it being more the driver's fault of hitting someone who was getting out of their car, the narrative changes to he ran out into the road and the driver stopped and waited there and called the ambulance. And
yeah, it's a nice little change.
Which also means that unfortunately he was hit in such a way that he would have died anyway, but because of his actions, he actually was closer to being saved than he would have been otherwise because someone tried to call an ambulance for him.
So, we've spent a very lot of time talking about everything great about the episode and basically rerunning the entire thing.
I could talk about this one forever.
Yes, but that's not the point of this
I know.
podcast. The point is
know.
fixing Doctor Who. So,
There's nothing to
how
fix.
many changes did each of us write down?
Oh, nothing.
I've got another Sam. I've got another like.
Okay.
Pete, at the very end of the episode, right before he kills himself, he
Speaks to the Doctor and the Doctor says, "Kill
he
yourself."
does do that. He gets through to Jackie.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah, that
And
was
Jackie believes him at the end.
Yeah.
We've known Jackie for a while in this show at this point.
Mm.
We know that that's not likely, and it does say something about their relationship where, after all of it, they've had a kind of a breakup and a make-up already in this episode.
Uh-huh.
She's accused him of incest kind of accidentally a few times. And the fact that he's the only character that we've met that probably could have worked out Rose was from the future, and he's also the only character that probably could have made Jackie believe that as well.
Yeah.
The Doctor could try. He could go back in time over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
He could try to convince Jackie of like a normal, innocent fact forever and never do it. And Pete manages to get through to her once, which I think proves that he's a good husband as well. I think that he's just a good guy. He gets people quite well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now you can talk about
we'll find out more
changes.
about that in the
I've
alternate universe.
got a few changes. None of
Go
them
for
are
it.
big.
No, it's fine. I don't mind you having
So the
changes.
very
I just need you
first
to know
one-
that I never will.
You think that Jackie should have been hit
The
by
Doctor, the Doctor is up on thing. He's like, "We can use this key. I just need a battery." They're like, "Here's a big battery," and he's like, "I'll just charge it with the Sonic." Why doesn't he just use the Sonic on the key? Why does he need the battery?
I wonder, and it's another thing where this episode doesn't go out of its way to explain too much to you, so it could be the case where I'm just
Kind of the opposite of the
grasping at
last
straws.
episode, but that's not really a problem here.
Yeah,
But yeah.
but like it sets up a lot of stuff very well, so it doesn't really need to.
Mm.
But I wonder if it's because the Sonic is not from this time, and the battery is. It's a big chunky battery from an 80s phone. He doesn't use the super battery that's in Rose's phone that's from the future. He uses the battery from the 80s phone. Now that's again me stretching for something that's not said.
I say it's not a
There's
big.
no
It's not a
reason
big
to believe
thing. It just seems a little odd
But I
that
like
he charges it with the Sonic.
he charges it with the Sonic because it needs to be full, presumably, or as full as possible. But surely the fact that it's a grounding piece of technology from this time, which is what he's
I
trying to
think
bring the TARDIS
there was
to,
no
time and everything.
I
Yeah,
think
I'm
there
with
was
Kamal
no
on
need
this
to
one.
charge it with the Sonic at all. He could have just been like, "What's the charge?" And he'd be like, "Oh, it's like half," and he'd be like, "Oh, that'll be enough."
Or he's like, I don't know, this is a phone from the 80s.
Sure.
That's what the guy from the 80s said.
he's like, buddy, I'm not a space doctor. Like,
But-
my dad just got eaten by a monster.
I don't think he needed.
This was his phone.
But that kind of
He
levity
did, I don't think
would
he
have
needed to charge
not
it with the
been
Sonic. He could just
pleasant.
be like, "Let's hope it has enough."
I know
That's
what you
fair.
mean. More
I get
dire
what you mean.
situation.
Again, it's not
for
like it's not a major nitpick.
I get
I
what you
just it's one.
mean.
Where
I
was
didn't
just
realise. I thought
it
you
just-
meant like, why didn't he just use the Sonic instead of a battery?
It just
Which I prefer him using technology from the time as opposed to using Magic Sonic.
It feels
I like
like
that.
the Sonic shouldn't have come out in the episode.
That's
to
fair,
me.
yeah.
For,
No,
well, no, for locking the doors, fine, but for charging the battery, I don't think it was needed for that.
I can definitely agree
I
with that.
think just hooking up the battery without that, it wasn't needed, and it just it took me out of the moment a tiny bit.
Because it was like, let's just magic this better kind of a thing.
Yeah, it just, I just a tiny bit. Because you're already doing the magic of, this key can summon the TARDIS. You don't need to then be like, I'm going to magically charge your battery also.
I would have in fact preferred if he had a line about the fact that this grounds it for where we are right now, which is much more useful.
Something like that.
You could go as far as to say this is more important than any other technology we could have right now.
Sure,
it would have been neat.
But like, it's just it took me, because like you get so enveloped in this episode, and it just took me out the tiniest little bit enough that I wrote it down.
That's fair.
Because I was like, that seems a little odd given how tight everything else is.
Yeah. I do like the way it's become, because I'm such a big backer of this episode. It's just you pitching, like, hear me out, don't hate me, but I have changed this little bit.
And I'm fine with that change too.
Me too, yeah.
Next thing I've written was, this was thinking back afterwards, so the previous versions of themselves disappear.
Yes.
There's a slight paradox in that, right?
In the fact that they disappear.
Yeah.
Right.
Because then how do they go and become themselves?
Well, that I think is part of the whole paradox that they create.
But
I don't.
How do they then continue to be those versions of themselves at the end of the episode when time has changed?
Yeah, but everyone else forgets all of the Reaper shit that happens as well. So I just think it's just a weird melding. Of everything.
It is a very, very tiny little bit of paradox.
I have to assume, because the Doctor has some weird way of fixing things with the TARDIS. He was going to keep Pete alive with.
But he hasn't yet been in the TARDIS at that point.
No.
And it's just tiniest little paradox issue.
But it's very small. I
It's not like I think it's just...
I also don't know... Okay, I'll put it this way. I don't know that they, are deleted from time when they disappear. Because they disappear with the exact same effect that the car does. And the car isn't...
This is true. That's true.
The car is almost displaced through time.
But they do see Rose before they disappear.
Yeah. The fixed event of the car going back around is kind of like it's trying desperately to still happen. Like, time is trying to force itself back to proper functioning flow.
So you're saying that the moment where they walk away still happens, and then the new version of him getting hit by the car happens with the...
I think it essentially snips the timeline and stitches the two bits together. Because his location of death also changes to outside the church, because the car is displaced in time. The event still happens as if it was happening when it happened before, but just in a slightly different location, closer to the church. Because they don't have to drive there anymore.
I think it's just... It's not like it's actually that big a problem that there's still a little...
You could probably make it work. As it stands, I don't think it quite makes sense.
Yeah,
I think I agree with you.
It's like a little nitpick.
But I was more thinking from the perspective of changing it. How would I justify it without changing really anything?
Because the runtime is flawlessly used.
They managed to get the pacing pretty good.
There's one more thing, which isn't quite as big an issue. Like, I know the whole thing is that car has to hit him, right?
Yeah.
But it is a bit odd when the time car's sort of just following them about.
Well, that's time
when they're driving.
I think
it's genuinely it's locked on to Pete.
I know, but in every other time we see it, it's him driving for a fraction of a second, going and disappearing. But there's the shot when they're in the car and he's just driving normally behind them for a minute or two.
Presumably,
it's a bit
also
weird.
Goes before vanishing in that instance.
We don't see it. I would have been fine with it.
He does do the hand thing, but I think Sam's point is that he drives for too long. He's materialised for too long
behind them. If he was behind them, in the back of the shot, and he's there, and then he goes like that and disappears behind them, and they don't notice, I'd be fine with it.
I don't know,
okay.
I think that's integral.
I think it's
to
just-
figuring it out.
Yeah, because I like the fact that Pete sees it but doesn't really clock it's the same guy yet, and after they turn off is when the car disappears, because he doesn't quite figure out it's the same guy until the next time the guy nearly runs him over.
It just feels like it doesn't make sense for the loop to change length so much.
Yeah.
To me, it feels like it's again. It's this is
that,
tiny.
I think that all that would need to change, rather than have it disappear behind them and them not notice, is have the car in the middle of the scene towards the end pull out into the position behind them and be there for less time. Like, just cut the duration of it being there, because then you can still have it be part of him realizing that there's time loop shit going on.
Sure.
Without, because I have thought that before when watching the episode of like it's inconsistent how long the car is materialized for.
Again, it's not big things, but like I think those are things I'd change. And then finally, the final change isn't to do with the episode,
Right.
but is something I know you want.
Oh, this is my change,
which is bringing the Reapers in anytime there's a paradox.
I think they deserve to be there.
That, yeah.
It's gonna be either bringing them in or having some kind of nod to them, explaining why they aren't there. So let's say
the paradox machine stops the Reapers.
Well,
I think that the way that I would show
were going to get eaten by Reapers.
the way that I
when I was a
show
kid.
I would show the paradox machine personally is and I'll get into this in more detail when we get there, but there's a big kind of cage placed around the main TARDIS console. I think in the centre of that there should be a Reaper like trapped to like just crunched
That would
up.
have been really cool.
Because I think that is low on CGI budget. It's low on. You don't actually have to have any dialogue to explain it. It's just a visual thing that's there to hint to the big super fans that care about the Reapers like me. There are loads of other little paradoxes in Doctor Who that are like the focus of an episode, and in some of them, there's stuff like a crack in time that's swallowing everything, and you don't need to have the Reapers there. And in some of them, it's because Weeping Angels are doing things. And maybe you don't need to have the Reapers there because the Weeping Angels are actively eating up the people that are producing the Paradox.
Yeah.
And they themselves are what hold bits of Paradox together. And there's always a way to justify it, except when there's not.
I
and
also
it annoys
think
me.
times when the Doctor speaks about not wanting to cause a paradox, he could potentially also
Yeah,
be like, you
there
don't
are-
want the Reapers.
Yeah, like you will let things into this world that will devour everything in their path.
So
I think the idea that the Time Lords used to stop the Reapers got really confused in my head for a long time. In my head, I thought the Time Lords were actually stopping the Reapers themselves, and not what I think is actually implied, which is
Yeah,
it was
they
just
stop
stopping
time.
people from fucking with time.
Yeah.
Like, if Rose tried to run out, Rassilon would have appeared and zapped her to death or some shit. Like, that seems more realistic for the Time Lords. He'd have got his power glove and he'd have zapped her to death.
I can't
And then
wait
he'd
for
have,
Rassilon's
like,
power
flipped
glove.
off the Doctor and teleported away.
Imagine Rassilon giving you a hand job.
Do I want to do
Should
that?
we end the episode?
He
on
just
that?
zaps you and you come.
Oh my god.
We've got some quotes to do.
Yes.
Yes.
I've got one quote.
I've got 5.
Got a handful.
May I go first, as I've only got one?
Yeah,
Some of them
sure.
are more serious.
1987's just the Isle of Wight.
That was the 1st one I did as well.
I've got
Glad
that
I
as a
jumped
quote.
in.
What
Very
a
good.
legendary quote.
Such a good quote.
So the first thing I wrote down was the Doctor very early on going, "Your wish is my command, but careful what you wish for."
It's a very, very good setup for the episode.
Yeah. And then 1907 is just the Isle of Wight.
Love that.
The Doctor shouting at Jackie Taylor, do as I say. And then
that
him
was
being like,
great.
I should have tried that earlier.
Yeah. I've got the first one I got from Pete was, well, it would be, wouldn't it? Where else would you put milk? Because when he goes, milk's in the fridge. When she like walks in, he's like,
Yeah.
you can make tea, milk's in the fridge. Well, it would be, wouldn't it? Where else you put milk? And then he comes up with a place that you would put milk that's not a fridge.
Don't touch the baby!
Don't touch the baby!
And then the very sweet thing of Pete going, thanks for saving me.
I have thanks for saving me. I picked another stupid ape.
Oh
That's
yeah.
a good one.
Very classic.
I have that's not me because it's not a very good quotable quote, but I think it's one of the most poignant quotes in context in the episode because of the scene it's in, where she's talking about what he did for her in her imaginary dad world. And the last one I have is I'm your dad. It's my job for it to be my fault.
So, what are we putting forward?
Oh, I think for the sake of a more quotable quote, I'm going to go for I picked another stupid ape.
I've got to go with 1987's Just the Isle of Wight.
Don't touch the baby!
I think Don't Touch the
I
Baby.
think Don't Touch the Baby. I think
Yeah.
that's the one. I nearly
I
wrote it
wouldn't have
down
voted
as well.
for that. I wouldn't have voted for that.
What would you have voted for?
It doesn't matter now.
Well, you
But
could
just
still
for
say.
the record, I would have voted for the Isle of Wight.
There you go. I mean, we did all write that one down, so it was clearly a pretty popular one.
Which 5-word summary are we thinking?
Right, so
Well,
the
we're
one
gonna
that
recap them all first.
the one that I am going to put forward is Best Dad Pete Fucks Hard.
I do like that one a lot. Mine is Despite Apocalypse, Jackie's attitude remains.
And mine is Jackie's incest suspicions cause problems.
I am voting for Sam.
I like Sam's one.
There we
Okay,
go.
there we go.
The writer for this episode,
Paul Bunyan, yeah.
Paul Cornell.
Paul Bunyan's where food is good.
Very
That's
similar,
good, eh?
very similar to another writer in this series. Just came in once, dropped an absolute banger, and left.
Inexplicably.
He's in coming once. He wrote.
No, but this series.
Oh, this series.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
What else did
he doesn't come
oh,
back.
yeah.
He comes back in season 3.
He
To
comes
write
back
other
in
bangers.
season 3 to write probably the runner-up to be my favourite episode. So I clearly just like this guy's writing. Because I really like the Family of Blood, Human Nature
I
ones.
wonder if you really like his
They are good.
episode of Primeval that he wrote.
Which one?
Did he write an episode of Primeval?
Which
no
one?
way. I probably do
I'll
like
have
that
to look it
episode.
up.
Probably.
Um,
Wait, which one do we reckon it's going to be?
I don't know.
I'll look it up.
I hope it's in
afterwards.
season 1.
I was going to say,
Um,
Future Predator?
The reason why I think I clearly
look that
like
up.
his stories is I was thinking, are there any other Doctor Who stories that come to mind that have as strong character writing in this? And I would say my second favourite is the one that explores the Doctor best, which is The Family of Blood and Human Nature, which were written by the same guy. So clearly I just have a type.
That
So-
one was very good.
And this was directed by
Oh.
Joe Ahern, director of Dalek.
Again,
Banger.
he's 2 for 2 on the best episodes of this season, I think.
Yeah, so far,
Um,
yeah.
And I think that everything about the direction of this episode was fantastic. You can see it in the performances, you can see it in the camera work, you can see it in how well everything pieces together. And of course, as always, Murray Gold going hard. Getting hard and fucking. Just constantly. Just
Endlessly.
jizzing music all over the shop.
Season 2, episode 6, Traitor Revealed.
Oh! So that's
Which
towards
episode
the
was
end.
that?
Well, if it's
Don't know.
season 2, if it's Traitor Revealed in season 2, it's going to be surely about, like, Connor's weird girlfriend that betrays them all.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Surely.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
rest
I
of
don't
the team
remember
capture
season
a
2
Colombian mammoth running rampant on the
That
M25.
episode. That was a good
Mammoth.
That was a good episode.
And the mammoth ends up coming back in the
That
finale.
mammoth was fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Good old Lester.
Set up that mammoth.
Lester's the
for
best
finale.
character in that show.
It's Ben
He's
Miller.
such a prick.
Can we
Yeah.
do, are we going to do Fixing Primeval?
No, I don't think so.
No, there's
There'd
too
be a
much.
lot to fix.
Yeah,
That'd be a
it's a
lot.
bit tricky.
I think people should share this episode with their dad. I think you should share this episode with your
Yeah.
dad.
And then
Yeah.
And if your dad's dead, bring him back.